He kicked off a 4-game road trip in Indiana on Monday, a place where the team has historically struggled to win. And after building and then blowing a 19-point lead, it looked like history would repeat itself until Jimmy Butler scored 7 points in 1 minute of the fourth quarter to help seal the win. We break down the game, Bam Adebayo's big night, and much more on today's Locked On Heat.
You are Locked On Heat, your daily Miami Heat podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, welcome to Locked On Heat, your daily podcast on the Miami Heat. However you might be tuning in on YouTube, Odyssey, or on your favorite podcast app, thank you for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. I'm Wes Goldberg here with David Ramil. Today's episode is brought to you by PrizePicks. First-time users can receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with the promo code LOCKEDON. That's PrizePicks.com, promo code LOCKEDON. Lowest scoring game this NBA season. The Heat beat the Pacers 87-82, and in case you couldn't tell from the score, this one wasn't exactly awesome to watch. The Heat shot worse than 39%. The Pacers shot worse than 36%. Both teams went 4 entire minutes in the fourth quarter without making a single field goal. Jimmy Butler did score 7 points down the stretch, giving the Heat enough for the win, and that's really all that matters here. Bam Adebayo was Miami's best player, 22 points, 17 rebounds for him. But the Heat still had plenty of issues in this one. Couldn't make a three. Too many fouls. Got blocked basically every time they went to the basket. But the biggest issue was that the offense actually looked good and fluid early in the game, and Miami got out to a 19-point lead. But then the offense stalled. The Heat had to grind this one out. Still, bright side, win is a win. The Heat are not in position right now to be picky for their wins. But to get back to the score, David, was this good defense or was this bad offense?
A little bit of both, mostly really bad offense. So I think, Tyrese Halliburton's been fantastic, an all-star level campaign for him. He struggled all night, 0 for 9, just really couldn't get a shot going. And his playmaking has been so dynamic, and that was limited. So I don't even know if Miami's defense was focused on limiting his looks or challenging him, making things more physical, or kind of bumping him off the three-point line. And again, forcing him into traffic.
I'll say that just on the Halliburton topic, I actually thought Bam Adebayo's defense on Halliburton was really, really good. The Heat switched everything. I don't know that they've switched this much in a game all season long. Indiana kind of gives that to you because of how small they are. They got Buddy Hield basically playing small forward. They start really, really small, which is helpful for Miami. Obviously, they've got Miles Turner in the middle. That's the only real big guy that they start, similar to Miami where Bam is really the only big guy that they start. But they basically, right. The Heat just switched everything, and time after time, I don't know what it was, but Halliburton kept bringing Bam Adebayo into the action, and Bam kept switching on to Halliburton, probably because the only big guy they have was the guy that Bam Adebayo was defending early in possessions, and if you're going to call screen for anybody, I guess you're going to call it for your big guy, but whatever. Bam just kind of locked up Halliburton every time on the perimeter and forced him into some tough turnovers, forced him to get rid of the ball and stuff like that, So I thought Bam's defense on Halliburton was the reason for Halliburton's struggles. But overall, like on balance for this game, I thought both teams were just putting up bricks the entire game.
It was horrific. Look, Miami's three-point shooting, that's the focus here. Like, if you want to go find out what happened with the Pacers, go check out Tony East on Locked On Pacers. But as far as Miami's offense is concerned, really, really ugly. The minutes where Max Strus entered the game, I think was really the start of Miami's downfall. That's where the lead started to slip away and allowing Indiana to make that comeback because Tyler had been so effective as a playmaker, not necessarily as a scorer. His shots weren't falling either, but as the playmaker, he was the only player, one of the only players with a positive plus-minus rating out on the floor. He was a plus 16, Miami's best on the night, just because he was making so many nice passes. Like, he's really turned a corner as a playmaker. I think all the talk, we've heard a lot of scuttle about it, not reporting anything necessarily, but there had been some tension in the locker room regarding Tyler's role and things of that sort, and I think he's bought into it. You pointed out a couple of weeks ago, I can't recall exactly what game, it was a thinly veiled comment from Eric Spoelstra about hunting statistics or something to that effect,
right?
And Tyler may or may not have taken that to heart, and we've seen his playmaking take an incredible level over the last couple weeks, really, where he's just been really focused on making plays for others. And I think that's what was so impactful. Then he takes him out of the game, puts Max in there. Max just can't seem to buy a bucket. He's like at 20% over the last week or so. teams have just been very, very physical with him, forcing him off the three-point line, contesting his open looks, not giving him an opportunity to get that shot going. And when he's out there, as one-dimensional as he is, without any kind of playmaking, without any really strong defense or anything like that, he's a non-factor. So it's basically 4-on-5 basketball with him out there.
Yeah.
And that was what led to Indiana creeping their way back up there, taking a lead of their own, and then playing just possession to possession for the rest of the game.
Yeah, Max Strus, I think he ends up going 3 of 12 from three-point range. I'm actually glad he put up 12 shots. That's a good sign. He needs to start making more shots. Nobody else. Fair. It's not as if he wasn't stealing shots from anybody else. Nobody could buy a bucket, especially from beyond the arc tonight. But the broadcast, I think it was Eric Reed at one point said, Max started, I think he made 2 of his first 3 or 2 of his first 4 from three-point range. And Eric Reed just gave him the good old jinx and was just like, yeah, Max has been in a slump and he's breaking out of that tonight. And I don't think he made another 3 the rest of the game. So you could blame Eric Reed if you want. We're not doing blame pie because it's a win, so we'll get the credit cookies later. But if we did have blame pie, I think we just give it all to Eric Reed tonight.
That's fair.
Look, back to the Tyler Herro point.
Eric.
Back to the Tyler Herro point. He has gotten so good at finding the open guy after he sort of makes his first basketball move. And what I mean by that is he tends to sometimes earlier in his career just sort of meander with the ball, take too many dribbles, kind of work his way into a long two-pointer or a contested shot or, an ill-advised layup attempt that kind of gets blocked or something. Lately, he's been bailing himself out of those areas with the pass. And so he'll take that first dribble and then he'll read the defense. And one of the other things that Spo said was he can't have a preconceived notion of what he wants to do, can't predetermine what he wants to do on each offensive possession or in each game. He has to read the game as it comes. And tonight, I think he started like 1 of 7 or 1 of 8 from the field overall or something like that. But he was playmaking early on, so you couldn't even really tell that his shot was off because I thought his floor game was really good. And I think that's why his plus minus was so good tonight. I actually thought he had a great game. We'll get to more on him in the credit cookies portion, but he's really taken another step. And again, I always go back to this. John Calipari telling me over the phone, I used to tell him, meaning him, Tyler Herro, don't pass it when he was at Kentucky. He was so bad as a passer, it actually hurt Kentucky's offense when he passed the ball. To go from that only a few years ago to where he is now is pretty remarkable. He is not just an okay playmaker. He is good. And then that's the big thing with Max Strus. Everybody's going to focus on the 3 of 12 from three-point range and the shooting slump that he's in, and that's fair. But the other thing, too, is when Strus isn't making shots, he does not have that playmaking ability. I know everybody said Max developed, he's getting to the basket, all this stuff. He needs that three-point shot to go in to open up the rest of his game. When guys are closing out, now he can attack those closeouts and get to the basket. Because if nobody's closing out and he's not creating leverage in that way because of opponents' closeouts, if he's not getting that leverage, he doesn't have the athleticism to get to the basket and blow by a guy who's just set, waiting for him and ready to corral him on the drive. He doesn't have that explosive first step. He doesn't have the playmaking chops. He's not a great passer. He's not a good playmaker. He's gotten himself into a lot of trouble when he's trying to kind of get into the trees and find open teammates. He's just not good at it. And so that's the other part of it. It's not just the shooting, but when you take Tyler Herro out, I know Victor Oladipo is back, and that's going to have to be the playmaking part. It also hurts that Gabe Vincent is still injured and out. But yeah, Tyler Herro's been really important just in terms of their floor game, which is not a thing I thought we would say at the beginning of the season.
No, that's fair. I mean, we criticize him for bogging out the offense at times, even when he was Miami's best scorer. Like the possessions were drawing on. He was just holding the ball for too long, not hunting those mismatches, not reading those defenses. And now, while the shot's not necessarily falling with the same rate, he's being, I think, more impactful, more positively impactful. And look, the win-loss record doesn't show it. But at the same time, there is a statistic floating around there I saw on Heat Twitter where the team is like, I want to say 8-2 in games where he doesn't score 20, or he scores less than 20 points. Like, there's something to that. I know you can pick and parse whatever you want to out of any number and use it to create whatever narrative you want to. But I think the reality is also that they need his scoring, but they also need him to be more than one-dimensional. I mean, again, the same point that we just made about Max. Max is one-dimensional as a shooter. And if he's knocking down those shots, if he can get those open looks going early, then that opens things up for him to drive to the lanes, make plays out to others, et cetera. If he's not hitting with the same regularity, because he doesn't have that first step, he becomes not just one-dimensional, he's zero-dimensional. He's a flat player out there doing nothing, and that takes Miami's offense and just drags it through the mud. Similarly with Tyler, at the very least, now we're starting to see other levels to his offensive creativity where you have to respect the shot because everyone knows at this point in his career as a 4-year player that he is a gifted scorer, but now you have to respect the pass as well. And that makes things so much easier for his teammates because especially when you have athletic bigs like Bam cutting and driving to the rim, you've got a smart cutter like Jimmy Butler, an incredible veteran like Kyle Lowry, a slasher like Caleb Martin. All of a sudden you have all these outlets for those great passes that Tyler's been making.
Yeah, that's how you become a starter, right? And not just a yay points guy. Credit Cookies is next, but first, David, tell the listeners about PrizePicks.
Oh, PrizePicks. Let me see if I can find a copy here. Yes, PrizePicks. Tonight, I'm taking Luka Doncic to score more than 26.5 points. That's an easy bet because they're crushing the Oklahoma City Thunder. LeBron James isn't even playing, but you know what? When he does, he'll probably have more than 7.5 rebounds. And Kevin Durant will have less than 6.5 assists because he's the MVP. He doesn't need to pass the ball. So that's what PrizePicks is all about. It's such an easy way to make bets. You make your entries. You just go up against the numbers. That's what makes it so easy. You pick 2 to 6 players, and if they score more or less than their PrizePicks projections, you can win up to 25 times your money. No competing against other people. It's just you versus the projections available. PrizePicks offers projections in any sport that you watch, including the NBA, NFL, Major League Baseball, college football, men's college basketball, women's college basketball, and so many more. Entries can be made in 60 seconds or less. It's that easy, safe, and fast withdrawals. Currently operational in over 30 states in Canada. Download the PrizePicks app or go to prizepicks.com to sign up and play daily fantasy sports. First-time users can receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with a promo code LOCKEDON. If you deposit $100, PrizePicks will give you $100. If you deposit $50, PrizePicks will give you $50. Don't forget to enter the promo code LOCKEDON at sign up for an instant deposit match of up to $100 at prizepicks.com.
Thank you for making Locked On Heat your first listen. For your next listen, check out the Locked On Sports Today podcast, the biggest stories of the day, plus instant reactions, big game recaps, and the take of the day. It's available on YouTube, Odyssey app, and wherever you get your podcasts. It's a Heat win, which means it's time to get in the kitchen, whip up some credit cookies. David, what kind of cookies are we whipping up today?
I was at Trader Joe's with my son this past weekend, which is always a mistake. Never go to Trader Joe's on the weekend. Always a bad choice. But I was there, and he wanted to pick out some cookies, and we got these cinnamon school book cookies shaped in letters. And that's basically what Miami did tonight. The ABCs are winning. They've got to get back to finding a recipe. So that's the cookie of the night. The cinnamon school book cookies from Trader Joe's.
All right. What flavor are they? Like just sugar?
I just said cinnamon.
Oh,
what? You're
cinnamon?
not even paying attention here. Jesus Christ.
You lost me on the alphabet. All right.
They're shaped like letters. That's what they're. It's the basics, the basic building blocks of our language. That's what Miami needs to find: the basic building blocks of a Heat win.
Thank the Phoenicians. Bam Adebayo gets 4 credit cookies. 22 points, 17 rebounds. Stat News tweeted out this stat earlier. Only Anthony Davis this year has more 20-point, 15 rebound games than Bam Adebayo, considering that Anthony Davis is maybe one of the guys in the MVP conversation right now.
List, yeah.
The fact that it's just him and Bam, it speaks to just how balanced and how consistent Bam has been all season. 22 points for him tonight. Jimmy Butler, he's also going to get 4 of these credit cookies. 20 points for him. If you can't do the math yourself, let me do it for you. 42 points combined. Yeah, I know. Don't get scared.
That's a first.
42 points between Jimmy and Bam combined. 42 of Miami's 87 points were Jimmy and Bam. I don't know if that's good or bad, but I know what it means is that they get the lion's share of the alphabet cinnamon credit cookies tonight. 4 for Jimmy, 4 for Bam. What do you think?
No, yeah, I think that's absolutely fair. Bam was fantastic. 15 points in the first half. Big part of why Miami was able to build that lead, along with Tyler's playmaking. I think he was the recipient of a lot of those smart passes, and he was able to take advantage using his speed, using his athleticism on a big shot blocker like Miles Turner. Still has that first step, still has that extra incentive. I don't know if he necessarily took it personally the way Michael Jordan did, but he certainly seemed like he wanted to be aggressive in attacking Miles Turner, something that we haven't always seen when Bam goes up against a bigger defender. So good to see that version of him.
You've pointed this out many occasions. I don't know that it doesn't happen anymore, but I have noticed it being less of an issue this season with, quote unquote aggressive Bam. comes out a little bit more often, even going up against the bigger centers. It used to be like maybe 80% of the time going up against a bigger guy, regardless of skill level. Bam might shy away from getting to the basket or even getting his own shot. Again, it happens a little bit still here and there. It happens to everybody. But for Bam, I feel like it's happening less, right?
Well, we haven't seen Valanciunas. We haven't seen Brook Lopez. We haven't seen Nikola Jovic. We haven't seen a lot of those quote-unquote bigger centers.
Maybe that's why.
Well, we'll hold judgment on that until we actually see it.
In terms of Jimmy Butler,
Ivica Zubac was the biggest limitation to what Bam could do. So whatever.
Fair point. In terms of Jimmy Butler, I mentioned how small Indiana runs out to start games. This game felt to me like it was Jimmy Butler's for the taking. The Pacers, their starting lineup is Tyrese Halliburton, who's very good, Andrew Nembhard, who's awesome apparently. Buddy Hield is basically playing a forward spot. Aaron Nesmith is their power forward. By the way, that kick ball on Aaron Nesmith late in that fourth quarter, I'm not complaining, but I don't know that I've ever seen anything like that when you're kind of in a scrum on the ground fighting for the loose ball, kind of like a fumble dogpile situation. I don't know that I've ever actually seen them rule a kicked ball. Even I'm sure the ball gets kicked all the time in that kind. Whatever, it doesn't matter. It ended up being the Heat's ball, and it didn't really have a material difference in the game. But I was actually a little disappointed with Jimmy Butler earlier in the game. I thought that he could have been a little bit more aggressive. 20 points on 16 shots, but it didn't matter because when it came down to it, after that 4-minute stretch when neither team could literally make a field goal, Jimmy Butler went in 1 minute, scored 7 straight points, and basically blew the game open for the Heat. They didn't trail after that, so he gets 4 credit cookies. Not going to be too picky in this one, like we already said.
We didn't talk about Bam's 17 rebounds too. Like he was a monster on the boards tonight.
Big reason why Miami had the edge. Yeah. 1 credit cookie to Victor Oladipo. 1 credit cookie to Tyler Herro. We already talked about the Tyler Herro stuff. He was awesome. He wasn't really awesome. 8 points on 3 of 11 shooting, 6 assists. But I'll point this out.
The scoring was problematic. But
a plus 16 overall in the box score led the Heat. And he only had 6 assists because the Heat couldn't make a shot. He probably should have had 15 assists tonight, David. He was a really good playmaker. He was getting the offense going on a night where Kyle Lowry was kind of just going through the motions a little bit. Maybe a little bit too much complaining to officials tonight for Kyle Lowry. And so Tyler Herro took the lead on offense. And so I respected that. But Victor Oladipo, let's talk about him. First game back in Indiana since he got traded from there in January of 2021. Stops in Houston, a stop in Miami, obviously still here, but never was able to get back to Indiana because of all the injuries. They do the tribute video before the game. You see him before and after the game, hugging guys and all these things. You could tell he really felt like that was his home. He was an all-NBA guy, an all-star there. Injuries, bad surgeries, the whole thing. We know the story with Victor Oladipo, and now he's here basically trying to find his footing in the NBA again. So for him to come out, it was an okay game. 5 points on 2 of 5 shooting, 4 assists, 4 rebounds. He did have a big steal that led to a fast break and a Kyle Lowry layup, but I thought it was a good night for him overall, and he had a positive impact, a +8 overall. Was really the only guy off of Miami's bench doing much of anything, so he gets a credit cookie.
Yeah, no, I mean the 4 boards, 4 assists. Like it was a small sample because only 19 minutes of play, but you hope that maybe that can extend and start to grow in terms of, having that same kind of level of contributions if he plays 25 to 30 minutes a game, which I think is fair considering how everybody else on the bench is currently struggling as much as they are. To have him out there, just again, attacking the rim, working that 2-man combination alongside Dwayne Dedmon or Bam or whoever else is out there on the floor, I think is going to help immensely. He just looked more comfortable out there. I hate, I hate jinx it or anything like that. And unfortunately, he's had so many concerns over the past few years. That
Eric Reed already took all the jinx out of the universe tonight, so you're good. I think you can say anything you want at this point.
But he looked good. He did look good. I mean, not great. Had the nice step back 3, really impressive shot. Baseline followed that with a baseline jumper. Yeah, also really nice. It just looked much more comfortable out there. I don't know if maybe it was just back in Indiana, or he had such a great career.
It's been, 3 or 4 games of him to shake off the rust? This makes sense. This is about the right timing for him to kind of knock off the rust. I'm with you. He looked more explosive, more comfortable, jumping the passing lanes, doing a lot of things that you want to see Victor Oladipo doing. He had that man-to-man defense, pick the pocket of, I forget who he stole the ball from, but he got it.
I think it was.
Yeah, and ended up getting that kick ahead to Lowry, hit that crossover baseline jumper, hit that 3 that you mentioned, the big one in the fourth quarter. That helped extend Miami's lead. And so, those are kind of the things that we saw from Victor Oladipo when he was healthy, and so now he's getting back to it. It's all good stuff. Can't be picky. Not going to worry about the box score too much, but you like to see some of the qualitative stuff that we saw tonight, not necessarily even if the quantitative stuff was a little ugly. Speaking of quantitative, do the Miami Heat have a Max Strus problem, and could they look to upgrade that spot before the NBA trade deadline? We're going to talk about that next, but first, David, tell the listeners about BetOnline.
Well, today's episode is brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline.net, your number one source for your sports betting info, stats, news, and analysis. You can get the latest odds and trends for every professional and amateur league out there, from pro football to college bowl season to basketball and the World Cup. Just a couple of matches left. Get in on all the action. We've got it all at betonline.net. If you love sports podcasts, you can find them all at BetOnline as well. And we're always the fastest and easiest way to get your betting info. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more. BetOnline, where the game starts.
Reach Locked On Heat on Twitter, Instagram, email us, lockedonheat@gmail.com. Use the hashtag AskLOHeat after the game to submit questions for our mailbag. Anthony writes in, should the Heat make Max Strus and Gabe Vincent available in trade talks with more players around the league being eligible to get traded this Thursday? David, should the Heat make Max Strus and Gabe Vincent available? Because before the season, we probably thought there was no way that could happen, but both have been struggling.
We talked about this in terms of a report, and I can't recall exactly who it was, regarding Miami's unwillingness to include Max Strus and Jay Crowder conversations. And we're like, yeah, that's the right choice. That was early on when he was starting or coming off the bench, filling in for Jimmy when he was missing time. And it looked like this was more or less the same version of Max that we saw emerge as a starter last year. Now, I'm not so sure. I think I'm hesitant to say that you should openly include him in talks, just because, again, the net value of what you would get in return for somebody playing at that level contract isn't that great of a contributor that's going to necessarily raise Miami's ceiling this season. He's not making enough, so you're going to be able to return something, get a return of significant value.
Right.
But, I mean, you've already got one-dimensional shooter on the bench that's not really playing much or contributing much at all. So I don't see why you wouldn't. I mean, if you've got to trade one of the two, obviously you'd probably prefer trading Duncan just because of the value of that contract and because of the albatross that it presents hanging over the team for the next couple of seasons. But Max, at this point, struggling so much, I don't see why you wouldn't include him maybe as part of a bigger deal.
Yeah.
If you can get something of significant return and value in return.
Yeah, look, I think that's what it would have to be, right? I mean, you mentioned the Jay Crowder rumors earlier in the season. Would it take Max Strus plus something else in order to get Jay Crowder or any other kind of rotation piece? And that's maybe what we're like. He only makes $1.8 million, whatever it is this year. So you're not trading Max Strus now and getting any. You're not trading Max Strus for Jay Crowder straight up. Let's just put it that way. Jay Crowder's making $10 million.
Right.
The salary matching, the way the trades in the NBA work, doesn't make sense. But including him as a sweetener. Now we're talking about something, because we know that the Heat are reluctant to part with any first-round picks. So if there's another team that might not even really care about other draft picks, because maybe they're more in a win-now mode, such as the Phoenix Suns, right? And they're looking just for a little bit of a sweetener to get a deal done, then I would see maybe including Max Strus in that. Here's the other problem with that, though. The teams want Max Strus now the way that they wanted Max Strus earlier in the year. I would say probably not. You know, other NBA teams aren't stupid. I know every fan likes to get on the trade machine and like Duncan Robinson for whatever all-star, and then Max Strus for whatever. Why wouldn't they do that? It's because they're also watching these games. And they also see that when his three-point shot's not going in, he's proved to be a one-dimensional player. I also don't think that Max Strus is this bad of a shooter. I think he's just going through a slump, and it happens. But the problem when you are relying on so many undrafted players, and I don't mean to harp on this, but undrafted players are undrafted for a reason. It's not some vast conspiracy that they're overlooked for some. That's not what's happening, okay? You love, like, it's cute, and the Miami Heat player program and all that stuff. It's cool that they get these guys and they find these guys who can be contributors. But when you're asking them to be your 6th, 7th, 8th guy and basically to be the only people on this team who can space the floor around your stars, Bam Adebayo and Jimmy Butler, that's a problematic thing. That's putting a lot on them. And at the end of the day, maybe you just need somebody who's a proven three-point. Gabe Vincent is also struggling. 29.7% on three-pointers. He's obviously hurt right now. But you look last year, if you look at his career, college, pro, whatever. Last year was the anomaly from his three-point shooting. He has not been a great three-point shooter for his career. Now, you thought last year he was just a product of the player development, and he became a better three-point shooter like Caleb Martin has, and he's obviously been good. And Caleb Martin will probably go through a slump at some point this season too, because everybody does.
There you go.
But
you can't help yourself.
I couldn't help it. But look, I think the Heat just need to rely on guys with more of a track record, like a Seth Curry kind of player who just has been doing it for a decade. There are just good shooters, right? And so this is the problem when maybe you can get it from here and there when you're 9th, 10th, 11th guy is undrafted like this, and maybe they just get on a hot streak, but they're too over-reliant on this stuff. I know I've harped on it a lot, but in terms of actually including them in a deal, I just don't really know what it would get. I don't know what it would get you at this point. I really don't. Like, what are you trading Max and, I don't know, Dwayne Dedmon's contract? It gets you up to $7-ish, $8 million. That's a player.
Who's taking that?
Nobody's taking that.
Who's out there saying, "Oh man, I can't wait to have a 33-year-old center with plantar fascia issues that barely rolls to the rim on our roster"?
Nobody's taking that.
Almost $10 million.
Nobody's taking that, and so I don't know.
But
what
you know
the
what?
deal is.
I will say that we were asked this question recently, and I can't recall after which loss it was, recent game, and they were like, "Well, do you think the Heat will be a little bit more hesitant to offer him a big contract in the offseason?"
Yeah.
Considering what happened with Duncan Robinson. And I think it's kind of playing out that way. I mean, I know a lot of people are concerned. It's like, oh, how are you going to wind up paying for Gabe and Max if you bring them back? I don't know that it's a done deal. At the start of the season, I think we would have considered it a lock. Then if they could get him on affordable contracts, they bring him back. Now I'm not so sure. What do you think?
I think Gabe Vincent still has a pretty good chance to be. I think it's between three guys. It's Max Strus, Gabe Vincent, and Omer Yurtseven. And like we said earlier in the season, maybe you bring two of the three back. Really hard to imagine bringing all three back, considering the cap constraints that Miami's going to be dealing with next season. Considering Jimmy Butler, Tyler Herro extensions,
but not at the same value that we would have expected or guessed at the beginning of the season, right? Like we would have expected they'd command like north of $10 million a year. Not very likely.
At this point, you could probably bring all of them back at what they're making now.
Yeah,
but I don't think that he would do that if these struggles continue. No, you need to see Max be more than this one-dimensional player that he is, and you got to see the three-point shot come along. Defensively, he has to keep getting better. He has to be better at driving. He has to be better at all this other stuff. But if that three-point shot doesn't come around, then maybe they don't offer him the contract. I don't know that even he would ever get as much as Duncan Robinson, just because the Heat can almost use their own bad contract in their favor in negotiations, basically saying, hey, we did this once, we're not doing it again. And by the way, every other team in the league knows this, so good luck trying to find that Duncan Robinson contract somewhere else. It's just not going to happen. So I never thought Max was going to make what Duncan Robinson made, because the market has already basically spoke for itself. But making $8-10 million, that doesn't even, that's where I thought he would be. Right. And that about half as much as what Duncan makes. And I don't know if these struggles continue, I don't know if that's going to be the case, because everybody goes through slumps. And if you're going to pay somebody that much, you want to see Max or somebody or a player be able to do other things when going through those. Like Tyler Herro, for example, he's making $30 million a year, $20 million, whatever it's going to be, because when his shot isn't falling like tonight, he can play make for you. He could do other things. But he's also a lottery pick. He's supposed to be doing this stuff.
The potential is there for him to be doing other things. Not the same thing with Max. Like Max cannot do those things right now. He doesn't have that skill yet, and I don't know that he's going to necessarily develop it anytime soon either. Yeah,
so we'll see. Look, I'm not to harp on this, not to be too hard on Max Strus and Gabe Vincent and these other guys, but they need to get better. And Miami's offense and all this stuff, it looks so much better when guys are making shots. It's just so much easier. I mean, how many times tonight would Max Strus clank a three-pointer off the front of the rim, and then Indiana would grab it, and then basically they would get a chance in transition and they would clank it off their own rim. But yeah, it was so many of these 5-point, 6-point swings, not just in this game, but over the last few weeks, regardless of who's been in shooting, not just Max Strus, but regardless of been
Miami's
shooting.
Miami's bench outscored a bench tonight. Can you believe it? I couldn't believe that Indiana's bench was that bad. But Miami's bench was actually just 2 points better. Unbelievable.
Thanks again for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. Remember to subscribe to new episodes of Locked On Heat on your favorite podcast app and on YouTube. Ring the bell to get notified as soon as new episodes go up. We're closing in on 5,000 subscribers. Let's get to it before the end of the year. For your next listen, check out the Locked On Sports Today podcast, the biggest stories of the day, plus instant reactions, big game recaps, and the take of the day, available on the Odyssey app, YouTube, and wherever you get your podcasts. David, this podcast was not as nearly as ugly as this game was.
Close. I had my moments there. I mean, we'll try better next time.